The mornings used to begin with laughter, a quiet kind that filled the space between coffee and sunlight. Now, the same mornings arrived heavy and soundless. The coffee turned cold before either of them took a sip, and sunlight only revealed what had faded, the warmth, the attention, the ease of being seen. Adeel sat across from his wife, Sarah, at the small wooden table they had once fought to buy. She scrolled through her phone, thumb moving like a clock's second hand. He wanted to ask her something, anything, but his thoughts came out half-shaped, like words that no longer belonged to their shared language. "Long day today?" he finally asked. She nodded, eyes still on the screen. "Always." That was all. It was always all. He looked at the framed photo on the shelf behind her, their wedding day, faces alive with the kind of joy that now felt fictional. His chest tightened with an emotion he couldn't quite name. It wasn't anger or resentment. It was a strange, quiet grief, the kind that mourns something that's still technically alive. Adeel finished his coffee in silence and left for work early. Outside, the world was loud with motion, car horns, chatter, the rustle of city air. Yet somehow, it all felt muffled, as if he were trapped behind glass. Every sound reached him dulled, every face blurred. He used to look forward to work. The office had once been a place where he could escape, where the rhythm of productivity dulled emotional noise. But lately, even that rhythm faltered. He sat before his computer, hands hovering above the keyboard, mind wandering to nothing and everything at once. During lunch, he found himself staring at the chair across from him, empty, yet somehow filled with the memory of what companionship used to feel like. That's when he heard her voice for the first time. "Is this seat taken?" He looked up. A woman stood there, simple, ordinary, almost unremarkable, except for the calmness in her tone. Her face was partially hidden by light. He couldn't have described her if someone asked. But her voice carried a warmth that felt unfamiliar. "No," he said, clearing his throat. "Go ahead." She smiled politely and sat down, unpacking her lunch. There was no flirtation, no intention. Just two strangers sharing a table meant for four. They didn't speak again until she dropped a napkin, and he instinctively reached to pick it up. Their fingers brushed, a trivial contact, but one that registered deeper than it should have. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded, managing a small smile. "Anytime." When she left, she said, "See you around." It was a casual phrase, one people used all the time. But for Adeel, it carried weight. "See you around." 3 simple words that lingered long after she was gone, echoing in his mind like a half-remembered song. That evening, when he returned home, the house was quiet again. Sarah was in the bedroom, watching something on her phone. The glow of the screen illuminated her face, distant, unreadable. He changed, sat beside her, tried to watch along. But his mind replayed that brief lunch, that gentle voice, that accidental touch. He didn't know her name. He didn't even know why it mattered. He only knew that something small had shifted, a fault line beneath the surface of his calm life. Before bed, he turned off the light. The darkness settled between them like a living thing. He closed his eyes, trying to remember when silence between them had started feeling heavier than words. Outside, a street light flickered, a pulse in the night. And for the first time in a long while, Adeel felt awake. Purpose of Section 1. Introduces Adeel, protagonist, and Sarah, wife. Establishes emotional distance and theme of quiet disconnection. Ends on a shift, the moment temptation quietly enters. Maintains tension and forward pull without premature escalation. The next few days unfolded like a quiet echo of that lunch. Adeel didn't expect to see her again, yet he caught himself looking, scanning the office cafeteria, the corridor near the elevators, even the faint reflection in glass doors. He told himself it wasn't searching, only coincidence waiting to happen. When it finally did, it felt almost scripted. She was standing by the coffee machine, struggling with a jammed lid. The same calm composure, the same quiet presence that had somehow stayed with him since that afternoon. "Here, try twisting it the other way," he said. Her laughter, soft, genuine, broke the monotony of his day. "You'd think I'd have mastered coffee lids by now." He smiled back. "You'd think." Adeel learned her name then, Mina. Simple, warm. It lingered in his mind even after she walked away. What began as harmless conversation grew roots. They started sharing lunch breaks more often. Conversations slipped from weather and work into thoughts about life, the kind of talk that felt too honest for two near strangers. She asked questions no one else did anymore. Do you ever feel like you're just existing? And he found himself answering without hesitation. Yes. Every day. Mina didn't offer solutions. She just listened, really listened, and sometimes that was enough to make the world feel less empty. Days turned into weeks. Their meetings became routine, though neither admitted it. Adeel began checking his phone more, waiting for her message, a meme, a quote, a simple, "How's your day?" Sarah noticed, once. "You're smiling at your phone," she said, half curious, half distant. He lied easily. "Just something from work." The guilt was faint at first, a background noise he could tune out. But it grew sharper each time he caught himself anticipating Mina's voice more than his wife's. One evening, Mina asked him to stay a little longer after work. The office was nearly empty, the city outside painted in sunset gold. She sat by the window, knees drawn slightly together, her face turned toward the light. "Do you ever miss who you used to be?" she asked. He hesitated. "Sometimes. I think I forgot what that version of me wanted. Maybe you just stopped being seen." The words landed heavier than he expected. Sarah hadn't said his name like that, softly, deliberately, in years. They didn't touch, not yet. But something unspoken passed between them, an understanding that scared him with how natural it felt. He left early that evening, unable to face the mirror when he got home. Sarah greeted him with the usual, "Dinner's on the table." No warmth, no question of how his day went. Later that night, as she slept beside him, Adeel lay awake replaying every word Mina had said. He realized how conversations could become confessions when shared with the wrong person. By the end of that week, the boundary between friendship and something else had blurred completely. They texted at midnight, exchanging thoughts they should have kept private. He told her about the silence at home. She told him about the loneliness of her own apartment. Their words became the thing that tethered them. It felt harmless, until the night she wrote, "Wish you were here." Adeel stared at the message for a long time. His chest ached, not from desire but from recognition, the kind that makes you feel seen in the wrong light. He typed back, "Maybe someday." The moment he hit send, the air in his room changed, heavier, stiller, charged with something he couldn't take back. He placed his phone face down and turned toward his wife. She shifted in her sleep, unaware, and whispered his name softly, a sound that struck him like guilt returning home. Adeel closed his eyes, the silence around him impossibly loud. Somewhere in that silence, he knew a part of him had already crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Purpose of Section 2. Deepens emotional connection between Adeel and Mina, turning casual contact into emotional infidelity. Shows Adeel's growing inner conflict and guilt. Ends with a definitive moral crossing point, the text message, "Maybe someday." Keeps focus intimate, introspective, and cinematic, maintaining the story's emotional realism. The rain came early that evening, turning the city into a shimmer of reflections and blurred light. Adeel watched the drops race down his windshield, each one merging with another before disappearing. He told himself he was only driving to clear his head, no destination, no plan. Yet somehow, his car stopped outside a small cafe he knew Mina often visited after work. He saw her through the window, reading something on her phone, her hair slightly damp from the weather. The sight felt accidental and inevitable all at once. For a long moment, he sat still, fingers tapping against the steering wheel, pulse steady but strange. He could leave. He should leave. But loneliness has a way of convincing even the strongest heart that comfort is reason enough. When she looked up and saw him, she smiled, surprised, hesitant, genuine. She waved, and in that simple gesture, every excuse he had rehearsed fell apart. Inside, the air was warm, smelling faintly of coffee and rain-soaked pavement. "You look like you could use a seat," she said, teasing gently. He smiled. "You look like you expected me to show up." She didn't deny it. They talked for a while, the way people do when pretending not to feel what's obvious. Words filled the space, but silence carried the meaning. The cafe grew quieter as the night deepened, until only their voices remained, low, careful, almost intimate. When Mina brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, Adeel noticed his hand move before thought could catch up. His fingertips touched hers, lightly, uncertainly, and the world seemed to pause. "You shouldn't," she whispered. "I know," he replied. Neither moved away. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, a sound like warning dressed as music. The rain intensified, streaking against the glass as if trying to erase the moment before it became memory. They left together, saying nothing. The air outside was cold, heavy with the scent of rain and asphalt. She walked close beside him beneath the umbrella, their shoulders brushing with each step. Every touch, every glance carried the weight of what both pretended not to understand. When they reached her building, she hesitated at the door. The key trembled slightly in her hand. "You should go," she said softly. "I will." But he didn't. There are moments when silence asks a question words are too afraid to form. This was one of them. She turned to him slowly, eyes uncertain but unresisting. And in the breath before reason could intervene, they crossed the threshold together. The apartment was dimly lit, a soft hum of the city filtering through the rain. She set her phone aside, and he placed his keys next to it, small, meaningless gestures that felt like surrender. He didn't remember the first touch clearly, only the way time seemed to dissolve around it. No urgency, no declaration, just two people trying to feel something they had both lost somewhere else. When it was over, the silence returned, not peaceful, not awkward, but absolute. Mina lay beside him, her head resting near his shoulder, her breathing calm. Adeel stared at the ceiling, the shadows shifting with the light of passing cars. He wanted to say something, anything, but no words felt true enough to hold the moment without breaking it. Mina turned slightly, her voice quiet. "You okay?" He nodded, though it was a lie. "Yeah." But in his chest, a different truth pressed hard against his ribs, that this wasn't a beginning, only a point of no return. She fell asleep soon after, a faint smile softening her face. He watched her for a long time, feeling both seen and unseen, forgiven and condemned. He thought of Sarah then, the way she said his name, the life they had built from small promises and ordinary days. And he realized that even if no one ever found out, something had ended tonight that could never begin again. Outside, the storm began to ease, but inside, the quiet only deepened. Adeel closed his eyes and felt the weight of his choices settle, heavy, human, irreversible. Purpose of Section 3. Portrays the physical act of infidelity symbolically, through emotion and atmosphere rather than explicit detail. Focuses on internal conflict, guilt, and moral collapse. Captures the HFY-style realism, the moment of human weakness treated with gravity, not glamour. Ends with reflection, setting up the aftermath in Section 4. The morning after felt unreal, too bright, too ordinary, as if the world refused to acknowledge what he had done. Adeel stood at Mina's window, watching the city stir back to life. Cars moved, people hurried, and somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. The sound struck him like a memory of innocence he could no longer claim. Mina stirred behind him, her voice still soft from sleep. "You're up early." He turned slightly, offering a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Didn't sleep much." "Me neither." They exchanged a glance that said everything words couldn't, that last night was something both of them wanted to forget and couldn't. It wasn't love, it wasn't even desire anymore. It was the echo of two lonely people reaching for warmth in the wrong place. "I should go," he said finally. Mina nodded, pulling the blanket tighter around her. "Yeah, you should." There was no bitterness in her tone, just quiet understanding. They both knew this was the end of whatever it had been. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the streets still glistened, reflecting pieces of the sky. As Adeel drove home, every traffic light seemed to hold him longer than usual, as though the city itself was forcing him to sit with what he'd become. His phone buzzed once, a message from Sarah, "Breakfast." He stared at it for a long moment, then placed the phone face down on the passenger seat. When he walked through the door, the house felt smaller, the air heavier. Sarah was at the kitchen counter, her back turned, humming faintly as she poured coffee. It was the same sound she'd made for years, a small domestic rhythm he used to find comforting. Now, it only made his chest tighten. "You're early," she said, surprised. Yeah, he murmured, taking a seat. She handed him a cup and smiled, a real smile, faint but sincere. Thought you'd be stuck in meetings again. He nodded, unable to meet her eyes. The smell of her shampoo, the way her hand brushed the table, the small gestures of familiarity, they all pressed against him like invisible weights. Everything okay? She asked. The question lingered between them. For a second, he almost told her. He almost confessed everything, the loneliness, the weakness, the moment he'd crossed the line. But then she looked at him, really looked, and he saw something he hadn't noticed in months, concern. A spark of the woman who once made him feel seen. Yeah, he said quietly. Just tired. She nodded and returned to her cup, unaware that those two words carried more truth than he meant them to. The days that followed unfolded like a fragile truce with himself. Adeel went to work, avoided Mina's floor, and buried himself in routine. When he passed her once in the hallway, they shared a brief nod, no words, no acknowledgement, only the shared understanding of something that could never be spoken aloud. At home, Sarah began to talk again. Small things, the neighbor's new car, a recipe she wanted to try, a show she thought he'd like. It wasn't the same as before, but it was something. And Adeel, haunted by guilt, listened with more attention than he ever had. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, he thought about telling her, not to be forgiven, but to be honest. Yet each time he imagined her face breaking beneath the truth, he swallowed it back down. Some confessions, he realized, don't cleanse, they only destroy what little remains. Weeks later, as he drove home through another light drizzle, he passed the cafe where it had all begun. Through the window, he saw Mina sitting alone, staring at her phone. For a heartbeat, their eyes almost met. Then he looked away. By the time he reached home, the sky had darkened again. Sarah was waiting by the door, smiling faintly as he walked in. He forced a smile back, and for a fleeting second, it almost felt real. He kissed her forehead, a small, clumsy act of repentance, and whispered, "I'm home." She leaned into him, unaware of the storm still moving behind his calm expression. Later that night, as she slept beside him, he stared into the dark, listening to her breathing. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full, of guilt, of memory, of everything left unsaid. And as he lay there, he thought, the first time with her, and she could never know it was also the last. Purpose of Section 4 concludes the emotional arc through guilt, consequence, and muted self-realization. Returns focus to Sarah, restoring emotional symmetry. Keeps the tone somber, introspective, and human, no redemption, only understanding. Ends with a resonant final line, completing the story's title theme.